Hello and welcome to Chef Del's Diet Days. I've got another fun interview for you today with my friend Brenda Morris. Brenda, how are you today?
I am good, Del. Thanks.
Thanks
Thanks for
for
booking me.
thanks for being here. So Brenda and I share a couple of things in common. We both have had our own weight loss stories and struggled with our journey from time to time and had great successes and then faltered along the way, proving that we are, yes, still human. Um, Brenda also, like do and have, coaches others on their journey. She does her coaching through the CHIP program. Now, Brenda, the CHIP program used to be the Coronary Heart Improvement Program, and now it's the Complete Health Improvement Program.
Yes.
Okay. So why don't we start? Actually, I want to hear your story first. You like the other thing that we share in common is that you've been on a diet since you were a kid. Is that right? Yeah, we both share that. So start there. What was your first diet like?
Oh, Weight Watchers.
Really?
Yeah, repeat customer multiple times. They've got a good gig going on. I would go in and lose a bunch of weight and get to my goal and say, yay, I can go back to where I was before. And of course, we all know what happens and it keeps coming back. But in high school, well, actually, most of my life I twirled batons. So I wanted to be a majorette. And, majorettes aren't allowed to be overweight. So that's when I was at the Weight Watchers quite a bit. But every time I'd lose 50 pounds, I'd gain back 75 or so. I think I eventually just kind of gave up on diet and just said, I don't care, but eventually as I got older, the weight kind of got in the way of living. And I said, I don't know, I just kept eating and eating. And I had a kid who was a vegetarian who kept nudging me towards eating healthier. And I'm like, yeah, whatever, you go ahead, where are you going to get your protein? I don't care. And then I had some heart issues unexpectedly. I had some physical therapy on a neck, and I went into the physical therapist one day and I said, Chris, those exercises are making the muscles in the front of my neck spasm. He said, what are you talking about? And I said, well, right now. He looked at me and he said, the muscle that's spasming is your heart. So that started me to thinking. He was in the doctor's office. They put me up on the cold, hard metal table for emergency EKG. And I'm laying there with those wires waiting to figure out what was going on, thinking about my kid who had been pushing me towards eating better foods, thinking I've got to do something. Shortly after that, we watched Forks Over Knives. And again, and again. And then I saw an advertisement for something called CHIP. They were doing an information session showing the movie again, and it was a potluck. And who doesn't like to go to a potluck when you like to eat food, right? But there were no chicken wings or hamburgers or cheeseburgers or that potluck. But I talked to some people there. I was lucky enough to sit beside Dr. Dave Drozek and his wife, and they talked to me a lot. I had people that went out of their way to make sure I registered for the class. And I said, okay, I'll do this, but there's no way in hell I'm giving up my meat and cheese and pepperoni double cheese pizza, because the pizza shop would go out of business, right? So I went the first night after stopping at McDonald's for my very last cheeseburger, and that's the truth. Terrified, mostly because I was terrified, like most diets, this wasn't going to work, but it did work. I went in somewhere in the neighborhood of 300 pounds. I was high blood pressure. I was on anxiety medicine. I was on thyroid medicine, sleep medicine, pain medicine. I was taking that little purple pill for GERD. I had the nitrate pills, arthritis like crazy. And funny thing happened, within a couple of weeks, my blood pressure was getting better. A couple of weeks later, the GERD was gone. I got to stop taking some pills. And as I kept through the CHIP program, I kept getting better. And I'm happy to say that today I take 0 medicines. My thyroid started working. I'm off the thyroid medicine. My blood pressure's fine. Everything's fine. I'm 64 years old and on 0 medication. And I give CHIP program credit for that. It is complete health improvement. My heart was not the only thing that improved through that program. So I've gone from sitting around in my rocking chair waiting to die at 50 some years old, because that's kind of what we do, right? I came from a family where diabetes, cancer, heart disease, all those things were prevalent. And I'm thinking, okay, it's just my turn. But now I'm ziplining through the rainforest in Costa Rica with Dr. Deal, and speaking to lots of people at different conferences about my story and the success of how CHIP has given me life.
Dr. Deal, by the way, is the founder of CHIP.
Correct.
Yeah, for our audience. Yeah. And so you, at some point, decided to become more formally involved with CHIP by becoming a coach?
Facilitator.
A facilitator? Uh-huh. So what was that? What does it involve to become a facilitator?
There's a training that you go through to be certified. A lot of folks will do CHIP on their own and try to get classes in their neighborhood. But I'm lucky enough to be in Southeast Ohio in Athens, and we have an organization called Live Healthy Appalachia.
Mm-hmm.
And they actually do the classes, set everything up, and they just call and say, hey, come teach the class. So a couple different ways of doing it. You can either work for other folks like Live Healthy Appalachia, or I know people from all over the country that have started their own little local organization and they do classes. So,
wow. So let's talk about CHIP a little bit, because it's not just a weight loss program. It is total health.
It's lifestyle.
There's a lifestyle, and it's based on lifestyle medicine. So there's the food component of it, but what else?
We talk about food, we talk about exercise, we talk about water, we talk about forgiveness, we talk about DNA. One of my favorite one is called DNA is Not Your Destiny. We all think that our weight is genetic, and sometimes it is, but in a lot of cases, it's not necessarily genetics. And with the research on epigenetics now, they're finding that oftentimes you can turn off some of those switches and change your genetics. So that's one of my favorite classes. We talk about re-engineering your environment. If you live in an environment where, there's a McDonald's on every corner and everybody in your family loves McDonald's, and, every advertisement you see is for fast food, trying to find ways to change your environment, trying to find ways to change what you keep in your pantry. Funny story, one of the things I did to change my environment, I have a tendency to crave Dairy Queen Reese's Cup Blizzards. And for about 2 weeks, I really, really wanted one. And I knew that I was going to be driving by a Dairy Queen that day. So in an attempt to change my environment, I stopped my car. I took my wallet and my cash and I put it in my trunk. And so that if I stopped at Dairy Queen, I would have to go through the drive-thru and get out of my car. And I managed to drive right by. So we talk a lot about those kinds of things. How can you overcome those obstacles that get in your way? I knew that was going to be a trigger for me. I knew that was going to be a temptation. And I just changed the way it worked and just drove right on by.
Wow.
We talk.
Oh, go ahead.
No, we just talk a lot about obstacles, and why we do what we do, and thinking about why and how we can change that. Mm-hmm. So it's not just here's a diet, eat this, not that. Mm-hmm. It's a whole different ballgame. And it's helped me be successful for the first time in my life.
Yeah.
So
yeah. You've had a few struggles along the way. You want to talk about that? I know you've had a couple of injuries.
Just a few. Can we write a book about Brenda's obstacles? Yeah.
You should.
Yeah. When you're 50, how old was I? 55, 56 years old. And for the first time in your life, you're not massively overweight. All of a sudden you feel like you're 20 years old, but, periodically your body says, no, wait a minute, you're not 20. My first injury, I had started running after barely being able to walk to the corner and back. Over time, my body just kept saying, need more, need more, need more. I was walking 10, 15,000 steps, 20,000 steps. And all of a sudden one day I just started like slowly jogging, and I worked up to where I was doing some 5Ks. My first time in the woods, I love to hike. It's my sanctuary. And I just felt like running in the woods, but I didn't have the right shoes. And it was first time I had run hills, and it was so wonderful that I ran forever, felt like it. So anybody that's a runner knows that's a perfect formula for an Achilles tear, which I did. And it knocked me down for about a year.
Wow.
I had to have a cast put on, and then a brace, and then a wrap, and just all kinds of crazy stuff. And, you know, I had lost, I think, maybe 70 pounds at that point in time. And, you know, the first thing, I don't know about you, Del, but anytime I was injured as a kid, it's like, oh, let's get ice cream. You know, oh, here, have more. Or here, let me go get you a double cheese pepperoni sausage pizza with, you know, triple crust or something. So, you know, you fall back to those old habits, but my chip learning kicked in, and I said, okay, I can't run, I can't walk, I can't hike. What can I do? And one of my friends, you remember James, who was the librarian here in Athens, said, hey, Brenda, the library has a hand trike. You can sit on it and pedal using your arms. So I found a way around my injury, and I ice covered bike trail I went, and it was so great to be able to move again, and it was a great workout. So about a year later, I'm starting to walk again, getting back on track, and a year to the date I ended up in the emergency room. I had fallen, tripped over an electrical cord, and I broke my kneecap. Here we go again. Same thing, you know, what can I do after I went through the depression? Give me ice cream, order pizza, all that stuff. I found a way to get up and move again. A couple months later, eye exam, I had torn my retina, probably when I fell and broke the kneecap because I fell on concrete. So again, I'm knocked out for a while. That one wasn't quite as long. It was awful because I'd have surgery in my eye. So then I'm moving quite along for, I think, a good 2 years, doing well, losing more weight. And what was the next injury? I started lifting weights. You know, at 60 years old, your body doesn't do well with lots of pounding on pavement. So I thought, well, what else can I do? So I started lifting weights. I'm very competitive. I played sports in high school, lifted way too much, tore my bicep. So then I had to have surgery on my shoulder, and they found 3 other tears. So knocked out again. It's just, you know, my most recent one was a hip. I don't know if I'd call it an injury, but I've been through physical therapy for my hip. So for the first time, I'm back to walking again. And but again, the whole time, it's easy to slide back to old habits. It's easy to say, I give up. But it's not easy to be that person. I was miserable before I lost all my weight. So I just kind of keep trying to put one foot in front of the other, or arm in front of the other, whatever I can do. I don't want to go back to that.
And I think that's kind of the key, is that, I mean, with some exception, everybody can do something.
Mhm.
And I think one of the keys to figuring out what that is to find a good trainer. Because I know when I started seriously going to the gym several years ago, I, you know, weighing 475 pounds at that time, there was not going to be a lot of like squats. There was going to be none of that. And, you know, anybody that would try and talk me into a squat, I would sit and look at them and then laugh. All right. Yep. Like, we're not doing that.
Yep.
So, and then up downs. What are some of those other things? Up downs, where you're standing up and you get down into a plank and you jump back up. No, we're not doing that either. So, you know, figure something else out. You know, and as my original trainer would say, she goes, I'll find ways to torture you, don't worry. And she did. You know,
Yep.
she would find things that I could do and then torture me with those. So I used to call her a daughter of Satan, because she was just determined to get me to work out in that hard, difficult way. But eventually it got better. And then I started working with another trainer who eventually got me boxing. My healthiest ever was working out with a trainer who had me in there 4 days a week. I started boxing. I got down to 300 pounds was, I remember, and I was running a little bit even, which I hadn't done since I was a kid. But sure enough, I stopped at some point, and this is why I think what they teach at CHIP is so important. You have to deal with every facet of your life, stress being one of them. You can't get rid of stress from your life. I mean, there are ways you can, but there's always going to be stress. So
Right.
you have to change your relationship to it. And I didn't take that lesson quite to heart, and ended up having a mild nervous breakdown a few years ago, and came home and sat and stared at the wall for 2 years. Not the right response, right? Not really the right response at all. So I think for those out there, the goal is, you've got to deal with the whole package. You've got to deal with it all. And if you're not, it's going to be a little harder to succeed at this.
Right. One of the guys in my most recent class that I taught just kept saying, Brenda, I know this is all up here. And I'm like, you're right. One of my favorite sayings, and if I ever get a tattoo, it will say, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And that's kind of been my guiding light through CHIP. I have to look at things differently.
Uh-huh.
Look at the ways I've learned for 50 some years of my life to live, and stress is one of those. The pandemic stress has been very difficult for me. Because all the things that I typically do for my stress, like have a massage,
Uh-huh.
Go to my favorite Casa Nueva and sit and have coffee with my friends. I can't do those things anymore. And with my injuries, I wasn't able to get into the woods. So again, I could have fallen backwards, but my CHIP training kicked in, and it's like, okay, I tell my people that I coach, I tell the people in my class, what's one thing you can do?
Mm-hmm.
I started reading again, and that's something I haven't done in years. That's kind of taken me a different direction. But just trying to figure out, there are, like you said, there are some things you can do, and you just have to figure out what it is.
Yeah, well, I think it's having a plan of action is always the way to go. And if we have more time because we are at home alone, like I am, I really don't have any excuses for not planning, and I still struggle, but
Oh, wait a minute. My guess is you probably do have excuses, but they're not good excuses, right?
yes, yeah, I can't really say them out loud because I would get in trouble, but yes, you're right. We talked about stress, we talked about struggles, and what happens when you fall down and you have to get back up.
Is getting back up. One of my favorite talks that I do is it's called Chasing My Wagon. Everybody wants to talk about falling off the wagon, but I want to talk about getting back up. That's the key. You can figure out a way to get back up, and like you said, a plan in action. I'm one of these people that still has a paper planner notebook kind of a thing, and in the back of it, I have a list. When I feel out of control, this is what I do. I have a list of 5 or 6 things, and the one that invariably works is always the number one, is clean my kitchen so I can cook.
Oh, okay.
I know that if I'm losing control, that's the first thing I have to do. But like you said, a plan. Think about it now while you can. What are things that you can do that will help you get back on track? And that list will change over time. But mine has always been clean the kitchen.
And I think the goal too is to automate your plan, automate your behavior. In other words, if you don't like to exercise, none of us really, I mean, some people like to exercise. Most of the time I hate it, but if you don't like to exercise, what you have to do is not allow yourself those excuses to keep you from doing it. You automate it, right? You schedule it and you go. And for me, that worked out well with a trainer,
Yes.
because I want to keep that appointment, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
The other thing that I do with exercise is I tell people to stop calling it exercise. Call it movement. Just move.
There's something to that, because the one thing that I used to do when I wasn't exercising was dancing. Mm-hmm. And I, of course, back in the day, it was into discos, and 3 hours on the dance floor. No wonder I was skinny, right?
Yeah.
But
Yes.
even as I got older now, right now, dancing is not a possibility. But at some point,
Yeah.
loved it. So find something you like to do and movement and do that. I think it's key, right?
Exactly. Or make it mindless. I have a friend that has a bicycle that sits under her desk, and she'll sit at her desk and work, and she just pedals, doesn't even realize she's doing it. So,
Mm-hmm.
find something that works. I will not watch an Ohio State football game without walking on the treadmill, at least through the first and second quarter. I figure if those athletes are working their butt off to entertain me, the least I can do is walk on the treadmill. So you just find not creepy, unique, unusual, different ways to get movement in. I march in place when I brush my teeth. You can get 200 steps by just marching in place.
I've watched some videos with Dr. Michael Greger, who is on a walking machine when he's recording video. I'm like, okay. And because what they say, the new walk or sitting is the new cigarettes.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think I've learned that to be true. If somebody wants to get involved with the CHIP program, how do they do that?
That's a good question. On their website, you can go in and see if there's any programs in your area. And I should know that website because I look at it all the time.
chiphealth.com.
There you go. Thank you. There should be a way on there to go in and check the area. If not, if they want to contact me, I would be happy to see what I could do to find out a place for them. I guess, yeah, those would be the two ways.
Hey, can I ask you about growing up? When you were a kid, did you eat fast food when you were a kid?
No, because we didn't have a lot of fast food. I think we got one McDonald's in town, and my family had a grocery store.
Oh, okay.
But I worked in that little family grocery store, and I had the candy behind me. I had the potato chips right here. The Twinkies and Ho-Hos were there. The pop was on this side of me, and the ice cream was down there. And I was in the store working by myself. I could eat whatever I wanted, and of course I did. So I did not grow up with fast food, but I did have a lot of food that was available fast.
And your family eats the standard American diet? Yeah. Most of us grew up with that. I too. Wendy's was the first. No, it was BBF. There's a BBF hamburger was the first thing I remember, and maybe McDonald's, but we didn't do it as a regular course of action. Mom cooked, and I come from a family of really good cooks, and what we were having at home was much better than anything we had out in public.
Yeah.
Yeah,
my dad didn't like fast food either. We didn't have pizza at home unless we got the Chef Boyardee and made it ourselves because he didn't like pizza until we all grew up and moved away, and then he decided he liked pizza. But
yeah.
My dad was someone who died of all the typical diseases we talk about, the diabetes, they had colon cancer, heart disease, all those things. And my mother, who is 84, has been working with me a little bit, and she was having blood pressure 160 to 170. And her mother had a lot of strokes. So I've been working with her a little bit, and she was down to about 125, 130 on her blood pressure just by changing and eating more plants. And, I don't know how she's doing through the pandemic, but
right.
As far as blood pressure, but those small changes in your diet can make a huge difference in so many different diseases.
Yeah, definitely. As part of your work as a CHIP coach, do you do cooking classes? What all do you do?
Well, I'm not a chef. I have a lot of friends that I've cooked with. With the CHIP program, we used to be able to do them in person. Obviously, we can't do that now. So my last class, what I did was I sent out a list of food for them to go buy. And then I sat on the computer and talked them and let them cook. Put this much water in your pan, then put the spinach in and let it wilt. Do y'all understand what it means to wilt? And we kind of walked through that. And then we all sat and had a meal together. So it's kind of my way of not being able to do a cooking class in the CHIP program in person, but we sure had a lot of fun doing it.
Oh yeah, I've done several cooking classes that way, or cooking events that way, cook-alongs. And
Yeah,
they seem to be kind of popular.
yeah. I like that they get to do the hands-on piece instead of watching me.
Yeah,
So,
it's all well, they learn more. It's always a little more productive.
exactly. And if they have a question, I'm there to answer. So,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
awesome. Did we
Yeah.
cover it all?
I don't know that we covered it all, but we sure did cover a lot of good stuff.
Well, I wish you continued success, and we got to keep moving forward and picking it up one day at a time, and
And get up.
keep on keeping on, right?
Absolutely. And someday maybe we can cook together again.
And something I'd love to share with, I love those little events that we used to do. We gather, and a small group of us would get together and cook a big meal together. I miss that on a day-to-day basis. I'd love to have a roommate that would like to cook with me. I don't have that, and it's hard to cook for one person. You struggle a little bit more with this, I think. So you
Yeah.
do, like last night, I made a big pan of something. I was just throwing things in there, and by the end of it, I didn't like it, and I had a lot of it left over by the end of the day. So even I have those kinds of days. What do you do? All right, my
You do.
friend. Thank you very,
Yeah.
very much. We'll see you
Yeah.
again sometime soon, I hope.
It sounds like a plan.
All right. Take
All right, Del,
care.
good luck to you. Thank you.